The gold key was cold enough to sting my fingers, and it was sitting at every family table except mine. Bass from the ballroom speakers pressed through the old brick walls in soft, heavy thumps. The restroom door sighed open behind me, releasing the sharp smell of bleach beneath layers of rose perfume and bourbon. On the small table beside it, my place card read, "Overflow." Lauren tapped the card with one pale fingernail. "That's where beggars sit," my daughter-in-law said. A few guests nearby stopped pretending not to listen. My son glanced at the card, then at me. Blake laughed once, low and dry. "Dad," Blake said, "please don't make this difficult." At 64, I had spent 25 years paying for, repairing, and running Whitmore Hall outside Asheville, North Carolina. I knew every warped floorboard in the old textile mill. Yet at my only son's wedding, I had been placed beside the restroom in a building I still owned. I set the key back where I had found it. It did not belong there. Its face carried a new version of our logo, a crown worked into the oak tree design Evelyn had drawn when we opened the venue. Beneath it, in tiny raised letters, were the words, "Founding Member." A serial number had been stamped along the edge. My table had no key. Lauren smoothed her wedding dress. "The seating plan was complicated, Gregory. We had to make choices. You made this one clearly enough," I said. Blake's mouth tightened. "She told you there wasn't room at the family tables. There are empty chairs at the west table." "Those are reserved," Lauren said. "For whom?" Her eyes moved toward the dance floor. "People who supported our future." The band struck a brighter chord. Waiters passed with champagne. At the nearest family table, a man I did not recognize turned his gold key over in his hand. I stepped toward him. "May I see that?" The man curled his fingers around it. "It came with our membership." "What membership?" His wife touched his sleeve. "Honey, maybe not now." Lauren's heels clicked behind me. "Gregory," she said, lowering her voice. "You've already made enough of a scene." I asked a question. The man looked from Lauren to me. "The Founders Program. We bought in last spring." Lauren reached for the key, but I held out my palm. "I own this building," I said. "I'm asking what was sold under its name." The man placed the key in my hand. It was heavier than a wedding favor should have been. On the back, a square code had been etched into the metal. I took out my phone. Lauren caught my wrist. Her fingers tightened against my cuff. "Don't." That one word carried more weight than her explanations. I pulled free and scanned the code. A page opened beneath a photograph of Whitmore Hall. Not a wedding page, a sales page. Founding members were promised first choice of wedding dates, preferred rates, private access to the garden terrace, and permanent recognition under the venue's next generation of ownership. At the bottom, a countdown showed less than 20 minutes until a founder's announcement. Blake came close enough that I could smell whiskey on his breath. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," my son said. "Yet." "We were going to explain after the presentation." Lauren raised one hand toward the bandleader. The music grew louder. I saved the page and photographed the serial number. The man who had handed me the key leaned closer. "We paid for a date next June," he said. Lauren said the deed transfer was almost done. I looked at Blake. He did not ask what the man meant. Instead, my son said, "Dad, walk away for 10 minutes. Let us finish this." 10 minutes. I handed the key back and moved through the service door. The music dulled to a steady pulse through brick and plaster. Stainless steel carts lined the corridor, and one wheel squeaked as a server pushed past. The venue manager met me near the catering office. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, "I was about to find you. Who approved the ownership announcement?" He blinked. "The brief said you had." "Show me." He pulled a folded packet from his jacket. It had arrived 90 minutes before the reception. The new logo appeared on the front. Blake and Lauren were listed as incoming owners. There was no signature from me. The manager rubbed the paper's edge. "I thought the transfer had moved ahead. Mr. Blake has been running daily operations since you stepped back." "He runs events," I said. "He does not own the property or the operating company. He cannot sell rights tied to either one." "I haven't seen any contracts." "Neither have I." "What do you want me to do?" I checked the time. "In 10 minutes, stop the music, lock the presentation screens, close every point-of-sale terminal owned by Whitmore Events, Preserve the system logs and the event brief. His eyes widened. Suspend the reception? The building is being used for an unauthorized sales launch and a false ownership announcement. That falls under the emergency clause. There are nearly 200 guests in there. I know. And your son? I know that too. The manager nodded. 10 minutes. I returned to the ballroom. Lauren stood near the stage with a microphone. Behind her, the screen showed the gold key turning above the words, "The Next Era, Whitmore Hall." Blake caught my sleeve. "You spoke to the manager," he said. "Yes. Unduit. You don't know what I told him." Blake's fingers tightened. "I know you." The old answer would have been to take him outside and find a way to keep the family name clean. Evelyn used to say, "I could patch any roof except the one over our dinner table." But the countdown had reached 8 minutes. "Who received the money?" I asked. Blake let go. "This isn't the place. You chose the place." Lauren lifted the microphone. "Before our special announcement, I want to thank everyone who believed in what Blake and I are building." Applause moved through the room. At 4 minutes, the screen flickered. At 2, Lauren glanced toward the service door. Then the band stopped. The final note broke off so sharply that glasses rattled against saucers. The screen went black. Chair legs scraped the floor as voices rose around us. Lauren turned on me. "You canceled my wedding because you didn't like your table?" She raised the microphone, offering the room her version first. I walked to the edge of the dance floor. "The reception is suspended," I said. "Whitmore Hall has been used tonight for commercial activity. I did not approve. If anyone received a gold key, signed an agreement, or paid money for future access to this property, keep every document and receipt." A woman near the front stood. "We paid for a founder membership," someone behind her said. "So did we." Then another voice. Blake stepped between me and the stage. "You're being petty, Dad." Lauren pointed toward the manager. "Turn the music back on." The manager did not move. The woman held up her phone. "I have the receipt. Right here." With her permission, I photographed the screen. The merchant name was not Whitmore Hall. The amount was more than a place on a mailing list. Beneath it was a promised wedding date and a reference matching the serial on her key. Lauren leaned over my shoulder. "It's a reservation interest, not a booking." Blake reached for the gold key. I caught it first. "Leave it," I said. His hand stayed in the air. As guests began to leave, I told the manager to preserve the exit footage only to document who had been present. Then I revoked Blake's and Lauren's access to the venue's business systems. Blake stared at me. "You're locking me out of my own company." "It was never your company." His face went still. In the lobby, 2 couples were arguing beside the coat check. Each had a gold key and an email confirmation open on a phone. I asked them to place the keys on the counter. The serial numbers were different. The date was the same. "So was the garden terrace," Lauren said behind me. "They're priority requests. That's all." I had not read the date aloud. Blake had already seen it. My son did not ask how 2 couples had received the same promise. He did not look at Lauren or at the keys, and he did not look surprised. Blake was still staring at the 2 matching dates when the ballroom doors clicked shut behind the last guest. A printer started whining in the office upstairs. Then another sound followed, sharper and faster. The electronic lock on the staff entrance chirped 3 times as someone tried a code that had already been revoked. "Remote login attempt," the venue manager said beside me. His name was Carl Mercer, and the wedding brief still trembled slightly in his hand. Blake's account. The gold keys on the coat counter touched each other with a thin metallic clink whenever someone brushed past. Wilting roses had been left in silver buckets near the lobby wall, and their sweet smell had started to turn sour beneath the cleaning solution from the restroom corridor. "Reset every company password," I told Carl. "Export the access logs first. Then lock the administrative accounts." One of the office assistants looked toward the parking lot. "Do you want us to take their phones?" "No. Their phones are private. We preserve what belongs to Whitmore Events, and nothing else." My own phone buzzed. Blake had sent 6 words. "You are stealing my company." The message sat under the name I had entered when he was 16 and got his first cell phone. My son. Not Blake Whitmore. Not chief operating manager. My son. I turned the screen face down. Whitmore Events is mine, I said. Every membership interest. Every voting right. Blake managed daily operations under a written delegation. That delegation ended tonight. Carl nodded once and walked toward the server room. By 1 in the morning, the office smelled of burned coffee and overheated toner. Access logs crawled across a monitor while the assistants canceled the following week's venue tours. Each cancellation took future money off the calendar. Nobody said that aloud. The empty lines did enough. A login attempt from Lauren's laptop appeared at 1:16. Another came at 1:22. Then Blake tried the shared drive. I watched each entry print onto warm paper and made myself leave the pages where they landed. The father in me wanted to call him before the locks finished closing. Give him 10 minutes. Ask him to explain before strangers began sending accusations into my building. But the owner in me had already seen 2 couples promised the same terrace on the same day. 10 minutes could erase more than a relationship. Just before dawn, we posted a notice on the Whitmore Hall website. Sales connected to any founder program were suspended. Anyone holding a gold key, agreement, confirmation, or receipt could submit copies through a secure claim portal. The notice did not call anyone a thief. It did not promise a refund. It said only that all rights would be reviewed and that no original document should be surrendered. Carl read it twice. That won't calm them down, he said. It isn't meant to calm them down. It's meant to keep them from throwing things away. At 6:30, the first email arrived. At 6:42, there were 5. By 7, Lauren had sent her own message to the membership list. Carl held the printed copy between 2 fingers. She says, "You're confused." I read it standing beside the window while gray morning light settled over the empty parking lot. Gregory Whitmore is experiencing difficulty accepting the planned leadership transition. All memberships remain valid under the new generation of Whitmore Hall. The message asked members not to contact venue staff. It told them to wait for instructions from Lauren and Blake. No public video. No shouting. Just a clean white email with our altered oak tree at the top. She has their addresses, Carl said. She has more than that. The first full agreement arrived 9 minutes later. Its file name contained the serial number from one of the gold keys. The logo looked close enough to ours to pass at a glance, but the legal name beneath it was different. Whitmore Founders Circle LLC, not Whitmore Events. The agreement promised exclusive founder access, preferred rates, and a specific Saturday in June. It called Lauren and Blake the incoming controlling partners of Whitmore Hall. I placed a yellow tab beside the phrase. Carl leaned over the desk. Does it say the rights begin after the deed transfer? We searched every page. Nothing. No condition. No disclosure. No sentence explaining that Blake owned no part of the building or the operating company. My phone rang before we finished. "Dad," Blake said when I answered, "those are conditional deposits. Show me the condition." A pause. Not long. Long enough. "It was in the sales explanation," Blake said. "It isn't in the agreement. You don't understand the structure." "I understand a promised date." "Then stop reading one contract like it's a murder confession." His voice had the clipped edge he used with employees when he wanted them to feel slow. "Who received the money?" I asked. "That's not the issue right now." "It is the only issue right now." Blake exhaled into the phone. "Restore our access before people start suing the venue. Your access stays closed. You're proving Lauren right." The call ended without either of us saying goodbye. By mid-morning, Carl had opened the official booking calendar on the large screen in the conference room. Rows of weddings, tours, catering holds, and maintenance days filled the year ahead. 7 dates carried more than one soft hold. No client names. Only initials. Carl rubbed his forehead. Lauren told the booking staff not to enter names until the transition announcement. Did she say why? She said the clients wanted privacy. We exported the calendar, saved the original version, and printed the access history. A duplicate date was no longer 2 angry couples in a lobby. It was a pattern buried under initials. The office phone rang again. A woman asked whether her daughter still had the garden terrace in May. Another caller had paid for founder rates, but had never spoken to anyone employed by Whitmore Hall. A third said Blake had personally assured him that the paperwork was nearly finished. By noon, the claim portal had become a line of names I could not look away from. Blake arrived after sunset. He did not come through the front door. His access code no longer worked, so he stood in the parking lot beside his black SUV, jacket gone, tie loosened, wedding band bright under the security lights. "You locked your own son out," Blake said. "I locked an operating manager out after he exceeded his authority. Listen to yourself." Wet leaves scraped across the pavement between us. The air smelled of exhaust and fallen oak leaves. "Lauren was testing demand," Blake said. "We needed proof the concept worked before we brought it to you. You collected money before bringing it to me. We collected deposits for rights you could not grant. They'll be legal after the transfer." There it was. Not if. After. "Who owns Whitmore Founders Circle?" I asked. Blake glanced toward the office windows. "Lauren set it up." "That wasn't my question. Give us access back, Dad. We can straighten the dates before anyone loses anything." "How many dates overlap?" His jaw shifted. I named the June Saturday from the first agreement. "We move one couple," Blake said. "That happens in events all the time." "No, it doesn't. You've been gone for 4 years. You don't know what happens here anymore." The words landed quietly. That made them worse. I had been gone because Evelyn could no longer climb the stairs without stopping halfway, because medicine bottles had replaced wine glasses on our kitchen counter, because Blake said he could handle the venue while I handled his mother. Now he stood beneath my parking lot lights and used those years as proof that I had surrendered everything. "Access stays closed," I said. Blake stepped nearer. "Then every canceled tour and every refund is on you." "That may be. You'll destroy the place Mom built. Don't use her for cover." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He walked back to the SUV and slammed the door hard enough to wake the security light over the loading dock. The following 2 days moved in printer noise, keyboard clicks, and cups of coffee that cooled before anyone drank them. We accepted only claims with a contract or receipt. Screenshots without source files went into an unverified folder. Originals stayed with their owners. By the end of 72 hours, 37 claims met the first standard. The serial numbers fell into ranges. Different ranges promised different benefits: founder access, garden priority, reduced rates, transfer rights. Not random keys. A system. Carl and I worked through the agreements in order. The 19th file opened just after midnight on the 3rd day. Beneath the promise of exclusive founder access sat an electronic signature: Blake Whitmore. Under his name was a title I had never given him: Managing Partner. Managing Partner. The words sat beneath Blake's name in a typeface designed to look official. Carl stood beside my desk, one hand wrapped around a paper cup that had gone soft from heat. The office printer clicked and settled behind us. Somewhere down the hall, a lock engaged with a hard metal snap. "He never had that title," Carl said. "No." Could Lauren have added it after he signed? Maybe. Or he used it himself. I closed the agreement without changing the file, then wrote the serial number on our evidence index. Guessing would not help us. Neither would giving Blake an excuse before we knew what he had done. The merchant name on the receipt belonged to Whitmore Founders Circle, LLC. By 9 that morning, I was at the public records terminal in the county administration building, reading the company filing from the screen. The room smelled of floor wax and old paper. A ceiling vent rattled every few seconds, as if something inside it were trying to get loose. Lauren Whitmore was listed as manager. Blake was listed as a company official. That proved they were both connected to the business collecting money. It did not tell me who controlled the payment account, who could move funds, or where a single dollar had gone. A public filing could identify the people behind a company. It could not open the company's books. I ordered a certified copy and returned to Whitmore Hall. Carl had placed the wedding brief on the conference table beside the event log. "I keep thinking I should have called you," he said. "You were told the ownership announcement had my approval. I should have checked." "When did you receive it?" 90 minutes before the reception." He opened the message on the preserved copy of the venue system. The attachment instructed staff to replace our normal oak tree logo with the crowned version, refer to Blake and Lauren as incoming owners, and prepare the main screen for a transition presentation. Nothing mentioned membership sales. No prices, No promised dates, no gold keys tied to contracts. The email claimed I had approved the announcement, but my name appeared only in the body. There was no signature, no forwarded authorization, and no message from my account. "You were misled," I said. Carl stared at the screen. "That doesn't make me feel much better. It should make you careful." His chair creaked as he leaned back. "Are you keeping me on? I need someone who knows what happened and is willing to preserve it correctly." Carl nodded. Relief moved through his shoulders, then stopped when my phone lit up with another email from Lauren. Her message had gone to purchasers, not to the public. She called Whitmore Founders Circle an authorized transition partner and described the suspension as a temporary family disagreement. Members were told their rights remained secure. Those with unpaid balances were instructed to complete payment, so their priority would not be affected. "She's still collecting," Carl said. "She's still asking." The difference mattered. We saved the message with its full header and delivery information. Then I posted a plain notice on the venue website and sent it directly to everyone who had submitted a verified claim. "Do not send additional funds until your agreement and rights have been reviewed." No accusation. No promise we could not keep. By noon, replies filled the portal. One purchaser had paid only half and wanted to know whether refusing the final balance would cost her wedding date. Another had been told her membership could be transferred to her daughter. A third forwarded an email from Blake. I read that one twice. The purchaser had asked whether the program was safe before the deed transfer. Blake's answer was short. "The deed paperwork is ceremonial. Operational control is already with us." The metal frame of my reading glasses pressed into the bridge of my nose. I took them off and set them beside the keyboard. A promise that the venue might belong to Blake one day had become, in his version, control he already possessed. Carl glanced at the email. "Do you want to call him?" No. That surprised both of us. Instead, I asked the purchaser for written consent to discuss how the membership had been presented. She agreed to a scheduled call that afternoon, provided we did not cancel her date before reviewing her paperwork. When her voice came through the speaker, it was careful and quiet. "Mr. Whitmore, Blake met us at a bridal showcase in March," she said. "He showed us pictures of the terrace and said your family was finishing a private transition. Did he tell you I still owned the property?" "He said the legal paperwork had not caught up with the family decision." "What did he promise you?" "First choice of dates and the founder rate. We picked a Saturday in May." "Did anyone from Whitmore Hall issue an invoice?" "No. Blake said the founder's company handled early enrollment." Carl wrote each answer in the call record. "Did Lauren make the sale?" I asked. "She handled the payment link." Blake explained the venue. That sentence stayed with me after the call ended. Blake explained the venue. Not Lauren alone. Not a signature buried at the bottom of a file. My son had sat across from strangers and told them my ownership was paperwork that had fallen behind reality. The shared drive gave us the next piece. We worked only from the preserved copy. Carl opened a folder labeled Future Events, then another called Transition. Inside were staff instructions for soft holds. Certain dates were to be entered with initials instead of client names. No venue invoice was to be issued before the deed transfer. A note at the bottom read, "Keep founder activity outside standard booking reports until ownership announcement." Carl pushed away from the table. That is why the calendar looked clean. It did not look clean. It looked incomplete. My phone rang again. "Blake." I let it go. To voicemail. His message arrived seconds later. "Dad, those folders are part of succession planning. You know that. Give me access so I can fix the mess you made." I saved the voicemail and returned to the instructions. The folder did not prove who had created the founder's plan. It did prove someone wanted part of the activity hidden from the ordinary invoice system until after the transfer. The initials on the soft holds were not bookkeeping shortcuts anymore. They were curtains, thin ones, drawn across dates that belonged to real people, and there had been no transfer. By the end of the first week, the wedding flowers were gone, but their smell still clung faintly to the service hallway. Staff moved through the building more quietly than before. Every closed door sounded final. Then, a legitimate client called. She had booked Whitmore Hall 8 months earlier through our normal office. Her contract was valid. Her deposit sat in the correct account. No gold key. No founder company. Still, she wanted out. Her contract had a handwritten note from Carl beside the tasting date. I remembered that couple. The bride had asked whether the garden would smell like lilacs in May. Nothing about her booking had been false, until my family made the whole building look uncertain. "My daughter can't risk it," the woman said. "We need to know the venue will be open next spring." "It will be open," I told her. "You can't promise that right now." She was correct. The contract allowed us to retain part of the deposit for a voluntary cancellation. I could have pointed to the clause and saved the money. Instead, I authorized a full refund. Carl watched the confirmation feed through the printer. The machine pulled the paper in with a dry rasp, then released it onto the tray. "That came out of operating reserve," he said. "I know. We have payroll, utilities, maintenance, and no new tours this week." "I know that too." He set the confirmation on my desk. The amount was not large compared with the claims arriving through the portal, but it was the first dollar Whitmore Hall had lost for a contract that Blake and Lauren had never touched. My phone displayed 3 new messages from legitimate couples. Each wanted an answer before Monday. Carl looked at the screen, then at the shrinking reserve figure on his monitor. "What do we tell them?" I picked up the refund confirmation. The paper was still warm. "We tell them the truth. And if the truth costs us 3 more weddings?" I looked through the office glass toward the dark ballroom. "Then we find out how many promises were sold before there is nothing left here to keep." By the 3rd week, the gold keys covered half the conference table. They lay in clear evidence sleeves, each one tagged with the name of the purchaser who had provided it, the matching serial number, and the source file for the agreement or receipt. Whenever Carl shifted a folder, metal tapped against metal in a thin, nervous chorus. Cardboard boxes from the printer vendor sat open near the wall, giving off the dry smell of paper dust and machine oil. 2 office assistants worked at opposite ends of the table. One entered verified claims, the other marked incomplete submissions in gray. Screenshots without original emails went into a separate file. Nothing moved into the main count unless we could trace it back to a contract, a receipt, or both. "Don't make the numbers prettier," I said. "If a serial is missing, write missing. If 2 people sent the same number, flag it." Carl slid another agreement toward me. "This one has a key number, but no promised date." "What did they buy?" "Founder rates and garden access. Benefits tier." He wrote the category beside the claim. The first week had felt like noise. By the 5th, the noise had taken shape. 168 contracts met our verification standard. 54 promised a date, a room, or a specific area of Whitmore Hall. The remaining 114 sold benefits such as reduced rates, bridal suite priority, garden access, and the right to transfer a membership to someone else. 18 dates carried promises that could not all be honored. I read the final count twice. Carl stood with both palms against the table. "That is not a test program." "No. And it is not a few deposits." "No." The keys answered for us with another soft clatter, as an assistant added 1 more sleeve to the row. We locked the verified inventory, then separated the remaining submissions into incomplete and disputed claims. It was slower than declaring every contract false. Slower than telling everyone to sue Blake and Lauren and leave me alone. But speed had created this mess. I would not use more of it to clean the floor. The printer invoice led us downstairs to a supply room Blake had used for event materials. Dust pressed into the seams of the concrete floor, and the air carried the stale sweetness of wedding candles stored through 2 summers. Carl lifted a brown shipping carton from the top shelf. The project code on the label matched the code from the altered wedding brief. Inside were foam cutouts shaped to hold the gold keys. Most were empty. Several still held keys, whose serials had never appeared at the reception. "How many did they order?" I asked. Carl checked the vendor invoice. 300. Fewer than 200 guests had attended the wedding. I turned 1 unused key along the edge of its sleeve. Its number belonged to a later block than any verified claim we had received. "They planned to keep selling," Carl said. "After the announcement. And after the deed transfer they expected you to sign." I put the key back. "We do not know yet what they expected me to sign." "Not yet." The box had a delivery confirmation, the original invoice, and a chain of project emails stored in the venue archive. Lauren had approved the final artwork. Blake's name appeared only on copied messages about delivery timing. Enough to show planning, not enough to show who designed the system. That distinction mattered more each day. Blake asked to meet in the garden during the 6th week. The fountain had been shut off to save maintenance costs, leaving the stone basin dry and lined with curled leaves. Wind scraped bare branches against the brick wall. My son stood beneath the pergola with both hands in his coat pockets. "Lauren controls the founder's company," Blake said. "You are listed as an officer. A title on a filing does not mean I controlled the money." "That is true." His shoulders loosened slightly. Blake had expected an accusation, not agreement. "I can get you the passwords," he said. "Merchant account, client list, drafts, all of it." "What do you want?" "Keep my name out of the claims." The wind rolled a paper cup along the flagstones until it caught beneath a bench. "You signed contracts," I said, "because Lauren needed a venue person on them. You sold at least one membership yourself. That couple misunderstood. You told them the deed was ceremonial." Blake pulled one hand from his pocket and pointed toward the building. "You put me in charge for 4 years. I ran every event while you were gone. I gave you operating authority. You gave me responsibility without ownership, then expected me to wait until you decided I had earned what you already promised." The pergola rope knocked twice against a wooden post. "Who designed the serial tiers?" I asked. "Lauren." "How many blocks?" 4. The answer came before he could stop it. Blake looked toward the dry fountain. I waited. "Founders, preferred, legacy, and patron," my son said. "It was just a way to track benefits." "How many unissued keys were in the last 2 blocks?" His jaw tightened. "I don't remember." "You remembered the order." "I saw the printer schedule." "When?" "Dad, take the passwords and stop trying to turn every detail into a trap." I stepped away from the pergola. "Send nothing. Do not access any account or file on my behalf. Formal requests will handle the records. You would rather protect strangers than your own son. They became my responsibility when you sold them something tied to my property." Blake's voice dropped. "Leave Lauren exposed, and I can help you save the hall." "No." One word. Clean. By the time I reached the garden door, he called after me. "When the payroll account runs dry, those strangers will not remember your principles." He was right about one thing. The second payroll cycle came due while new sales remained suspended. I transferred personal funds into the operating account so the staff could be paid. The confirmation page felt warm beneath my hand when it came off the printer. Carl studied the balance. "You cannot keep doing this." "I know. The reserve will not cover the claims." "I know that too." Our early estimate placed the shortfall above $1 million, though we still lacked official processor records and could not treat that figure as final. My retirement accounts and the operating reserve might keep the doors open for a while. They could not erase what had been sold. The rights matrix made the problem harder. Some contracts could be performed. A founder rate could be honored if the date was available. Garden access could be scheduled. A bridal suite promise could be modified. Others could not. A couple named in one verified claim came to the lobby carrying a binder thick enough to bow at the rings. Their promised Saturday overlapped with another contract, but the following weekend remained open. "We do not want a refund," the bride said. "My father is ill. We planned around that month." Her fiancé kept one hand on the binder. Lauren said the date was guaranteed. "I cannot guarantee the original date," I said. "I can place your claim under performance review and offer the following Saturday while we verify the rest." The bride looked toward the ballroom doors. "Will this place still belong to your family?" The question settled between us. "I can tell you who owns it today," I said. "I will not promise who controls it later until I know the people who paid into this are protected." They accepted the review instead of a refund. After they left, I changed the claim categories. Perform, modify, refund. Whitmore Hall was no longer just the thing Blake wanted, and I was afraid to lose. Kept open under the right control, it could repay part of what had been taken. That evening, Carl and the assistants went home. The conference room still smelled of cardboard, cold coffee, and the faint brass scent left on my fingertips from handling the keys. I opened the preserved copy of the serial spreadsheet. The current file owner was Lauren. Earlier versions sat behind it in the revision history, each marked by date and user account. Most changes carried her name. Then, I reached the first version. The user ID belonged to Blake. I checked the creation date against the founder's announcement. The file had been created months before Lauren ever presented the program as hers. The verified total reached $1,980,000 just after 9 on Monday morning. Carl read the figure from the spreadsheet, then checked it against the stack of source documents beside him. The conference room smelled of cold coffee, printer toner, and the faint metallic scent left by nearly 200 gold keys sealed in evidence sleeves. "That is money actually paid," he said. "Not unpaid balances. Read it again. 1,980,000. An office assistant turned her laptop so I could see the filters. 168 verified contracts. Some purchasers had paid in full. Others had made partial payments. Every amount in the total came from an original receipt, an electronic signature file, or a card statement submitted through the portal. Nothing estimated, nothing promised. Money collected. The revision history bearing Blake's user identification remained in the forensic queue. I knew when the first spreadsheet had been created. I did not yet know what that first version contained. The unpaid balances sat in a separate column. Lauren had sent those members a polished chart over the weekend, showing how much each person still owed and warning that delayed payment could affect priority rights. A woman forwarded the message at 9:14. Another sent the same email 3 minutes later. By 10, we had 27 original copies with full headers. Lauren's words never used the word threat. "To preserve your founding position, please complete your remaining balance promptly." Soft language. Hard consequence. I dictated a written notice to Whitmore Founders Circle, its domain host, and every verified claimant. Sales remained suspended. No additional payment should be sent until rights had been reviewed. The notice did not accuse anyone of fraud, and it did not promise that Whitmore Hall could honor every contract. Carl looked at me over his glasses. "You know Blake will call this interference. He can call it whatever he wants. The notice will say exactly what we know." My son called before lunch. "You are sabotaging Lauren's company," Blake said. His voice came through the speaker, sharp and flat, with no greeting. "Lauren is asking people to send more money for rights tied to property she does not own. They already signed agreements. That does not create authority. You are the one creating the crisis." A printer started behind me, feeding out another member email. The machine clicked at the end of the page. "Did Lauren schedule those messages before the reception?" I asked. Blake went quiet. "Answer me." "It is an automated campaign." "That was not my question. You stopped an entire business over a seating insult. The seating insult got me to the key. The key got me to the contracts." His breath moved against the phone. "You always need to make yourself the injured man." I ended the call before the father in me started answering a question the owner could not afford. By the middle of the month, the payment map covered one wall. Purchaser receipts gave us merchant descriptors, dates, amounts, and transaction references. They did not tell us who controlled the processor account or where the money went after settlement. That line mattered. It mattered every time two numbers sat close enough to tempt me. Founder payments clustered before invoices for the gold keys, wedding flowers, luxury furniture rentals, and the new crowned logo. One payment landed on the same day as the deposit for the key order. Another differed from a floral invoice by almost exactly the processor fee. Carl tapped the 2 pages. "That looks bad. It looks related. Isn't that the same thing?" "No. Money moved through accounts like water through old pipes. A date and an amount could point us toward the right wall. They could not prove which pipe had carried which dollar. One claimant wanted me to release a statement saying the wedding had been paid for with stolen deposits. Her father had charged the membership to a retirement account and was demanding action. I called her myself. "Mr. Whitmore, you can see what they did," she said. "I can see when you paid. I can see what you were promised. And the wedding invoice. I can see when that invoice was issued. So say it. I will not turn a lead into a fact because the fact would feel satisfying." Silence filled the line. Then she said, "My family is waiting for money." "I know." "No, you know numbers." The words stayed after the call ended. At the end of the second month, Lauren agreed to a limited settlement conference at Whitmore Hall. She arrived in a cream suit with a leather folder held against her ribs. Blake came behind her, carrying no papers. We met in the small conference room, not the ballroom. My request was simple. Preserve the records. Stop all solicitations. Provide voluntary copies of company statements, processor summaries, and account records, so claims could be evaluated without months of formal process. Lauren crossed one ankle over the other. Whitmore Founders Circle is not your company, she said. You have no right to its private records. I have a right to protect my property, and the people sold rights connected to it. You canceled a valid launch because your chair was near a restroom. Carl shifted beside the wall. But I kept my attention on Lauren. Will you provide the records? No. Blake leaned forward. We can give you a summary. Prepared by whom? By us. That is not disclosure. Restore my operating access, Blake said, and I will let you review the balances. The offer landed between us with the neatness of a wrapped gift. Access for records. Control for evidence. No, I said. Lauren's folder snapped shut. Then you have chosen delay. You chose it when you refused. Blake stood. You are choosing strangers over your son. Your customers became my responsibility when your company sold them access to my venue. They left without providing a page. That afternoon, I signed the instructions to begin formal civil disclosure. The process would take months, maybe longer. By then, more legitimate couples might cancel, more payroll cycles would pass, and the number on the reserve account would keep moving in one direction, down. The cabin appraisal arrived 2 weeks later. I opened the folder at my kitchen table. The paper was thick, almost rough beneath my thumb. Through the back window, late winter light lay across the bare deck, where Evelyn used to leave seed for cardinals. Estimated net value after costs was $640,000. Not cash. Not yet. A title check had to be completed. The property needed to be listed, shown, inspected, and closed. Even a clean sale could take months. Still, the number changed the room. Blake learned about the appraisal before I told him. His message came that evening. You are burning the family down to impress people who will sue you anyway. I set the phone beside Evelyn's empty chair and read the appraisal again. The cabin could become a bridge fund. It could keep staff working, cover urgent refunds, or protect the lender reserve while the formal records arrived. But once listed, it would stop being the one place untouched by the venue. I called the appraiser and authorized the title work. Nothing more. Not yet. By the end of the third month, legitimate refunds and suspended sales had cut deep into the operating reserve. Sunday night found Carl and me in the venue office with 3 lists spread across the desk. Payroll, lender reserve, emergency claimants. The ballroom beyond the glass sat dark and silent. Without music or voices, the old building made its own sounds. Pipes ticked behind the wall. A vent hummed. Somewhere in the kitchen, an ice machine dropped a load with a distant crash. Carl ran the numbers again. We can fund payroll and keep the lender reserve intact, he said. Or we can issue the emergency refunds and come up short on payroll. Not both? Not without touching the protected reserve. That stays untouched. One emergency claimant needed money for a parent's medical care. Another had lost a job after paying the founder balance. A third had canceled a different venue because Lauren promised a guaranteed date. On the other list were 34 employees whose checks were due Monday morning. Carl pressed 2 fingers against his forehead. If payroll fails, people leave. If people leave, we cannot honor the contracts that can still be performed. And if we hold the refunds, families wait for money we know they need. The account balance glowed on the monitor. Not enough. I placed the payroll list beside the emergency claims. Monday was less than 9 hours away. I chose payroll. At 5 minutes past midnight, I transferred enough from my personal savings to cover 34 checks and 2 emergency refunds. The third claimant stayed on the priority list because there was not enough left to do everything. Carl read the confirmation twice, then pressed the print button. The machine pulled in a sheet with a dry scrape. No one gets to pretend this solved the problem, I said. Carl placed the warm page beside the payroll report. It bought us 2 weeks. It bought the staff 2 weeks. Monday morning arrived with delivery trucks at the loading dock and employees trying not to look toward the office windows. Every paycheck cleared. 2 families received refund confirmations. 1 did not. That name followed me through the next month. By early February, the preserved copy of the serial spreadsheet had reached the front of the forensic review. The examiner worked only from the company image we had created after the wedding. No private devices. No guest passwords. Each file opened against an audit log, and every export received a matching record. The first version of the spreadsheet appeared on a monitor in the small conference room. Its title was not Founder's Circle. It was Legacy Circle, created by Blake Whitmore. The date was January 8th, 9 months before his wedding, and 14 months after he and Lauren became engaged. Columns ran across the screen for member tier, promised benefit, proposed date, deposit amount, and transfer status. A final column carried a heading that made the skin along my thumb tighten against the edge of the table. Pressure created. Carl leaned closer. What does that mean? I don't know yet. The examiner opened the revision notes. Blake's first entry described a plan to sell future control before any deed changed hands. Early commitments, he wrote, would make reversal expensive. Public recognition of members would make it embarrassing. A launch inside Whitmore Hall would turn an unsigned family promise into an obligation everyone could see. Lauren had expanded the tiers, changed the name, approved the crowned logo, and added higher prices. But the first structure was Blake's. So was the pressure. The audit trail showed the plan changing in small, deliberate steps. January brought the first list of benefits. February added deposits. March added specific dates. By May, the file carried a note about using initials in the official calendar. Lauren's account did not appear until June, when prices rose and the crown replaced Evelyn's oak tree. That order mattered. It did not excuse Lauren. Her changes turned Blake's pressure plan into a larger machine, one built to collect more money and display more status. But she had not planted the first seed in his computer. She had found it growing. Near the bottom of the original sheet, one test entry used the initials of a couple who later appeared among our verified claimants. The promised garden date matched their signed agreement. The document was no abandoned idea. Parts of it had moved into the real world. For months, I had kept a narrow space in my mind where my son could still be the man standing beside a bad decision rather than the man who drew it. The space closed without a sound. Carl looked at me. Do you want to stop? No. The vendor records came next. Printer emails showed Lauren approving the final artwork, yet earlier messages carried Blake's instructions for 4 serial blocks and 300 keys. He asked for extra inventory beyond the wedding guest count. Another note told the printer to keep the serial numbers visible along the edge because members would need to recognize status at a glance. The same need to be seen had built the evidence. I added the founder file, revision history, and printer records to the evidence index. Each entry listed its source, date, account owner, and what it proved. Not what I believed. Not what Blake's behavior suggested. What it proved. The founder file showed he created the first plan. The printer trail showed he helped design the tracking system. Neither document, by itself, proved where the money went. Official account records were still months away. That afternoon, I asked Blake to meet me in the ballroom. No tables, no flowers. Just the polished floor, the dark stage, and the faint smell of wood cleaner rising from boards Evelyn and I had sanded 25 years earlier. Blake's footsteps came back to us from the far wall. He stopped beneath the blank presentation screen. You finally found something you can use against me, my son said. I found what you wrote. His gaze moved toward the windows. Lauren turned it into a sales company. You created Legacy Circle. I created a succession plan. You created a column called Pressure Created. Blake rubbed his thumb along his wedding ring. Because you never made decisions until someone forced the timing. You sold rights before I made the decision. We proved demand. You proved people would trust my name. His jaw worked once. Your name was supposed to become mine. The room held the low hum of the heating system. Dust drifted through the light above the dance floor. You could have asked me, I said. I did. For years. You asked when you would inherit. You did not ask permission to sell. Blake took 2 steps toward me. While Mom was sick, I kept this place alive. I answered calls at midnight. I covered staff shortages. I watched you disappear into that cabin every time the venue reminded you she was gone. I was caring for your mother. And before that? The question struck an old board under the floor. Not enough to break it. Enough to hear the weakness. I missed things, I said. I let this building take meals, weekends, and pieces of your childhood. I cannot return. Blake's shoulders shifted, as though he had finally found the door he wanted. Then fix it, he said. Say Lauren designed the program. I will turn over passwords, contracts, everything. Keep my name out of the claimant record, and I will help you save the hall. You already offered that. Now you know I can deliver. You are asking me to change the truth. I am asking you to remember I am your son. The metal key in my pocket pressed against my leg when I moved. It was one of the unused founder keys from the supply box, sealed in plastic and carried only for the meeting record. You counted on that, I said. Blake's voice dropped. You chose strangers when Mom needed you home. Now you are choosing them again. I heard the accusation underneath the bargain. He wanted my absence to purchase his innocence. I failed you in ways I can name, I said. That does not make these contracts legal. It does not make the money yours. And it does not make Lauren responsible for words you typed before she sold the first key. For a moment, Blake looked younger than 34. Then his mouth flattened. If you put that file into the formal index, we are done. The file goes in. He stared at me long enough for the heating system to click off. The silence that followed felt larger than the ballroom. You will not have a son after this, Blake said. You made that threat before I made this choice. He walked out through the service door. It closed, with one heavy strike. Back in the office, the evidence index waited on my screen. Blake's section remained marked draft. I could have described him as an employee who followed Lauren's program. The contracts and signatures would still have raised questions, but the first design would have stayed buried in an internal folder until someone else forced it out. My cursor rested over the attachment field. Then I added the founder file, its audit history, the printer communications, and Blake's signed agreements. I marked the package complete for formal disclosure. No speech. No witness. A click. The path back to the family I had been pretending to protect closed with it. Carl found me an hour later, searching the corporate archive by the old project code from the printer order. What are you looking for? He asked. Context. Messages filled the results. Menu drafts. Key packaging. Guest placement. Then one email appeared beneath a thread about the ownership presentation. Blake had written it to Lauren 6 weeks before the wedding. Once the keys are in their hands and the money is committed, he cannot pull back without destroying the hall. After the reception, he will have no choice but to sign. That email spent the next several weeks inside a formal evidence request. It did not open Lauren's accounts or tell me where the money had gone. It did not give me the right to pry into a private payment system because the words made my hands shake. So we waited. By the beginning of the 6th month, the scanner in the conference room fed page after page into a secure archive, its rollers squeaking every few seconds. Certified processor records arrived in sealed boxes that smelled of cardboard and toner. Thousands of lines. Settlement batches, service fees, refunds, transfers, user logs. They answered questions the wedding receipts could not. Lauren was the account administrator. Blake had been added as an authorized user in February, months before the gold keys appeared on the wedding tables. His account had viewed balances, downloaded reports, and approved several settlement changes. The logs did not prove he spent every dollar, but they ended his claim that he had merely signed papers Lauren put in front of him. Carl sat across from me with a calculator beside his coffee. Total collected, he said. $1,980,000. The figure matched the verified purchaser records after fees and reverse charges. For the first time, we were reading the records of the company that took the money. I ran one finger down the administration log. Read Blake's first access date again. February 12th. Before the first bridal showcase. Before the soft holds. Before Lauren sent a crowned logo to the printer. My son had not stepped into the account after trouble began. He had been inside from the beginning. Lauren answered through a written response. The account, she said, handled membership services separate from venue bookings. Wedding costs and branding were proper launch expenses. Blake sent his own statement 2 days later. I had access, Dad. Access is not control. The word Dad sat in a sentence prepared for formal disclosure. I saved it with the rest. Over the following weeks, the money separated into 4 piles. What remained in the accounts, what could be recovered from refundable deposits and traceable assets, what had been spent on items that still had value, and what was gone. A flower invoice did not become proof because it shared a date with a founder payment, but a transfer into a luxury apartment deposit had a sender, a receiver, and a bank record. So did the money used for unused key inventory, a vehicle payment, and several refundable vendor deposits. When the tracing schedule was finished, $430,000 remained in the accounts. Another $540,000 could likely be recovered after costs from traceable assets and refundable deposits. The shortfall was about $1,010,000. Carl looked through the conference room glass toward the ballroom. Even with the cabin, we cannot pay everyone at once. No. And if we sell the hall, we kill the contracts we can still perform. The answer had sounded like self-interest when Blake said I could not let go of the building. Now the numbers said something else. Closing Whitmore Hall would turn every membership into a cash claim. Keeping it open could save dates, honor reduced rates, and earn money for the refunds that remained. The same building my son had used as pressure might be the only thing large enough to repair part of the damage. We divided the claims into 3 groups: perform, modify, refund. Couples with valid dates and available space could receive the service they bought. Others could accept new dates, different rooms, or revised benefits in writing. Those who could not wait, or whose promises could never be honored, would receive refunds according to need and available funds. No one was forced to accept a substitute. At a meeting with claimant representatives, a woman placed her gold key beside the written options. "My daughter does not want your building anymore," she said. "She hears the name and remembers being lied to." "I understand. Do you?" Her key rolled half an inch and struck the table with a small, bright click. "We sold her car to make the last payment," the woman said. "Lauren told us the founder rate would save money later." I slid the refund election toward her. "Then this is the option you should choose." Another couple wanted their wedding performed. A third asked for a different month because the original date had been sold twice. By the end of the meeting, the hall had stopped looking like a single asset on a balance sheet. It was a calendar full of people who had made plans around promises. Blake called the classification system theft. "You are using our company's contracts to make yourself look generous," he said. "The contracts are being reviewed because they depend on my property. You are buying strangers' loyalty with the hall I was promised. The hall is not a payment for being my son." He laughed once. "Nothing warm in it. You always say that after choosing everyone else." The cabin closing took place near the end of the 8th month. Repairs, title work, and closing costs had reduced the proceeds, but the final amount was still $640,000. The buyer signed first. Then the papers came to me. The closing room smelled of fresh paper and old carpet. A pen chained to the desk dragged against the wood each time I turned a page. The cabin was the last place where Evelyn's coffee mug still sat in the same cabinet, the last porch where I could hear her point out the cardinals. Blake called, while the escrow instructions waited unsigned. "Do not sell it," he said. "The sale is already closing. Give me 3 months. I can raise money." "With what security?" "I have contacts." "That is not security." His breathing roughened. "You are selling Mom's place for people who would not know her name. They know yours." Then Blake said, "Keep the cabin. Give me time to bring assets in. We can settle this without destroying everything. You offered passwords for protection. Now you are offering money you do not have for time you already used. I am trying to help. You are trying to keep an inheritance." The line went quiet enough for me to hear the closing agent turn a page. I signed. The final instruction sent every dollar into a restitution escrow account. None of it could return to me. Not for retirement. Not for another house. Not if Blake apologized tomorrow. When the pen left the paper, the cabin stopped being mine. The money bought time, but it did not close the shortfall. A bridge fund was not forgiveness. It was a way to keep 34 employees working while claims were paid and weddings were performed. At the beginning of the 9th month, Blake asked for one more meeting. We used a rented room away from Whitmore Hall. No family photographs. No keys on the table. I will turn over the remaining assets, he said. I will testify about Lauren's spending. In return, the new structure keeps me as a future beneficiary. No, you did not even ask what I can recover. Restitution does not buy inheritance. Then give me a board seat later. No. Blake pressed both hands flat against the table. You are giving my mother's work to strangers. I am protecting people who paid for rights you sold. And when they are paid, the venue still will not return to you. His chair scraped backward. You would rather erase the family name than admit I earned part of that place. You earned consequences. Ownership was never guaranteed. He left without taking the folder he had brought. That night, I gave the drafting instructions for the Whitmore Stewardship Trust. Verified claimants would hold beneficiary rights during the restitution period. A community foundation would receive the remaining interest after those obligations were met. An independent trustee would oversee operations. Lender consent, a new valuation, claimant notice, an objection period, and a required reserve would all have to be completed before any deed could move. The process would take at least 3 more months. I required one clause to be read back to me. Gregory Whitmore, Blake Whitmore, and Lauren Whitmore shall hold no beneficial interest, remainder interest, guaranteed compensation, or veto authority. Carl looked up from the draft. That includes you. Yes. Once the trust received the hall, I could not pull it back because I missed the office or hated a board decision. Blake could not wait out the claimants and inherit what remained. Lauren could not revive the founder program through another company. Lauren's objection arrived before the draft was finished. She accused me of stealing the future she and Blake had built. I signed the final line of the trust proposal. It did not leave Whitmore Hall to my son. It did not leave Whitmore Hall to me. The first claimant objection arrived before the trust notice had reached everyone. It came by certified mail in a thick envelope that dragged against the brass slot in my office door. The paper inside smelled faintly of toner and damp cardboard. A couple from Ohio believed the transfer was an attempt to hide Whitmore Hall from them before their refund could be paid. They were wrong, but I understood why. For months, every promise tied to the building had changed shape under their feet. A wedding date became a priority request. A membership became a family disagreement. A gold key became a souvenir whenever Lauren needed it to. I would not ask anyone to trust another unexplained document. The notice went out with the full claim schedule, the current reserve, the proposed trust terms, and a plain statement that the hall would remain available to satisfy valid obligations. Claimants could choose performance, modification, or refund where the facts allowed it. They could object. They could request supporting records. Nothing in the transfer removed their claims. Carl stood beside the mailing table while envelopes moved through the postage machine with soft mechanical thumps. You know, some people will object, no matter what we send, he said. They should object if they think something is hidden. And if enough of them do, then we answer them. The objection period lasted 45 days. During the first week, 7 written questions arrived. By the third, we had 3 formal objections. None accused the trust of keeping money for me. They wanted to know who would control the calendar, how refunds would be ordered, and what happened if the hall lost money. Those were fair questions. I answered each one in writing and added the answers to the public claim file. Lauren's objection was different. She called the proposed transfer theft. According to her filing, Blake and she had spent years building the future value of Whitmore Hall in reliance on my promise that the property would pass to my son. Their memberships, she argued, were not unauthorized sales. They were advance commitments made on behalf of an expected ownership transition. The paper did not deny the contracts. It did not deny the dates. It did not deny the money. Lauren's argument was that I had no right to stop what she believed I had already promised away. Carl read the filing at the conference table. The gold key from the first wedding night lay in its evidence sleeve between us. She finally admitted the program existed, he said. She admitted her version of it. She also says the members relied on the transfer. So do the members. That is why the trust has to carry the obligations. Lauren had tried to use the claimants as a wall between me and the deed. Instead, her objection made the wall visible. Every answer had to show that the building remained behind it. The lender took longer. Whitmore Hall still carried a commercial mortgage from the restoration work completed years earlier. The bank wanted a current appraisal, 12 months of operating forecasts, proof of the restitution reserve, and confirmation that the independent trustee would keep the property insured and open. Nothing moved quickly. The appraisal took 6 weeks. The lender review took another month. Each delay cost money because new sales remained limited, while valid weddings, payroll, utilities, and repairs continued. By the beginning of the 11th month, the trust reserve was still short. The cabin proceeds had cleared months earlier, but part of that money had already covered urgent refunds and payroll. Recovered founder funds remained in escrow. Traceable vendor deposits had not all been returned. The lender required a larger operating cushion before it would consent to the transfer. Carl slid the latest cash forecast toward me. "There is one line left to cut," he said. "My compensation." Since Evelyn died, Whitmore Hall had paid me a modest management amount. Not enough to explain the house or the cabin. Those came from decades of work and earlier savings. But the monthly payment covered groceries, insurance, and the ordinary costs of being alive. I crossed it out. Carl's chair creaked. "You are not donating weekends. You are giving up your income." "I am giving up control. The income goes with it. You still have expenses. I still have savings." "For how long?" The question stayed unanswered. Removing my compensation brought the reserve within range. I added a written condition that I could volunteer at the hall but could not direct staff, sign contracts, control the calendar, or override the trustee. The claimant objections were resolved through written clarifications, while Lauren's filing was limited to her claimed reliance and gave her no ownership interest. The lender approved the transfer 2 weeks later. Blake asked to meet the night before the final documents were scheduled for signing. We stood in the empty lobby. Rain tapped the tall windows, and the stone floor held the cold through the soles of my shoes. The brass letters, spelling Whitmore Hall, reflected the security lights above the entrance. My son did not bring a folder this time. "Give me one future board seat," Blake said. "No. Not now. After restitution. No. One seat does not make me owner. It gives you a path back to control. You are giving strangers more power than your own family. They did not sell what they did not own." Blake looked toward the ballroom doors. "I worked here for 4 years while you were gone. That work was real. Then recognize it. I did. I paid you. I gave you authority. I trusted you. You gave me a job in the place I was supposed to inherit." The rain struck harder against the glass. "An inheritance is not earned by creating a crisis large enough to force it," I said. Blake stepped closer. His voice dropped until the lobby seemed built around it. "If you sign tomorrow, you are ending this family. You said that when I put your file into the evidence index. I meant it. So did I." His lips pressed together. For a second, his right hand moved as though he might reach for my sleeve the way he had on the dance floor. Instead, both hands disappeared into his coat pockets. "You will die knowing you gave Mom's hall away," Blake said. "It was never hers alone, and it was never yours." He walked out into the rain without looking back. The closing room smelled of ink, carpet cleaner, and the bitter coffee someone had left on a warming plate too long. A representative for the independent trustee sat across from me. The lender consent rested beside the claimant notice record, the reserve confirmation, and the final trust acceptance. No one made a speech. The first document transferred the deed from Whitmore Hall Properties LLC to the trust. The second assigned every membership interest in Whitmore Events LLC, so the trust controlled the operating company. The third confirmed the restitution obligations and barred Blake, Lauren, and me from any beneficial interest, guaranteed compensation, inherited position, or veto authority. My name appeared at the bottom of every page. The pen felt lighter than the master key in my pocket. "Mr. Whitmore," the closing officer said, "you may still stop before execution." I looked at the deed. For 25 years, my signature had opened accounts, hired staff, repaired roofs, and promised vendors they would be paid. Blake had counted on the same hand signing because shame, pressure, and family history left me no other choice. This signature would do the opposite. I signed. The trustee signed next. Recording took the rest of the afternoon. I returned to the venue before the notice arrived and stood outside the office that still carried my brass nameplate. Carl found a screwdriver in the maintenance drawer. "You want me to do it?" he asked. "No." The first screw resisted. Metal scraped against wood, loud in the quiet corridor. The second came free more easily, and the plate settled into my palm with a faint layer of dust along its edge. My phone chimed from the desk. The recording confirmation had arrived. Whitmore Hall no longer belonged to Gregory Whitmore. I placed the nameplate in a drawer and took the master key from my pocket. Under the new rules, it had to remain in board custody until the trustee issued access assignments. Carl held out the locked key box. For a moment, the worn teeth caught against the plastic sleeve of the first gold founder key lying nearby. One key had been used to sell ownership that did not exist. The other had once opened every door in the building. I dropped the master key into the box. The lid closed with a small, final click. Blake had nothing left to inherit. Neither did I. The evidence did not look dramatic when arranged in order. It looked tired. By the 13th month after the wedding, the conference room table held 3 banker boxes, a locked evidence case, and a ledger thick enough to strain its binder. Paper edges had gone soft from handling. Certified records carried blue seals. The gold keys rested in clear sleeves, each one tied to a contract, a receipt, and a serial entry. When the civil team asked me to explain the case, I did not begin with Lauren's insult. I began with the first key. "The key led to the code," I said. "The code led to the sales page. The sales page led to contracts. The contracts led to duplicate dates. The dates led to the serial map. The serial map led to the company records. The company records led to the processor logs. Those logs led back to the founder file and the email about forcing the deed." A chair squeaked across the carpet. Lauren's written response called the keys wedding gifts. Her representatives described the agreements as expressions of interest, the duplicate dates as flexible requests, and the money as service fees for a future business. One item at a time, each explanation could almost breathe. Together, they suffocated. A gift did not carry a purchaser's contract number. A flexible request did not collect a non-refundable balance. A future business did not hide soft holds in an existing venue calendar while telling buyers that control had already changed. Blake admitted the contracts existed. He admitted he had access to the processor account and helped design the serial system. But his statement drew a line around spending. "Lauren controlled the money," he said during one recorded meeting. "I handled venue planning." "You created the first plan," I replied. "I created a concept. You called the deed ceremonial." Blake's cuff brushed the tabletop as he pulled his hand back. "I was trying to keep the business moving. Before you owned it." No one raised a voice. The recorder's small red light stayed steady between us. The company entered court-supervised receivership 2 weeks later. That word sounded cleaner than the work. Receivership meant frozen accounts, listed assets, canceled subscriptions, returned vendor deposits, and reports that arrived with numbers no one could soften. Lauren fought the liquidation of the membership company, arguing that its brand still had value. The receiver found otherwise. Without Whitmore Hall, the crowned logo meant nothing. The customer list was mostly a list of people asking for refunds. 300 gold keys, once priced as symbols of access, sat in evidence or unopened boxes. The company had $430,000 left in cash. Refundable deposits and traceable property added more, though every recovery came back smaller than its purchase price. A luxury vehicle sold at a loss. Custom furniture fetched less than half its invoice. Branding costs were gone completely. Blake surrendered account credentials and identified 2 vendor deposits Lauren had not disclosed. That cooperation mattered. It did not erase January 8th. By the 16th month, the membership company could no longer pay its obligations. The receiver's report recommended liquidation, distribution to the claimant fund, and administrative dissolution after the remaining records were transferred. The preserved records and receiver's reports were provided to investigators through the formal process. No one was charged on my word alone. Lauren objected from beginning to end. Blake stopped objecting when his own counsel showed him the founder file beside the processor administration logs. He asked to see me in a neutral conference room. The room had no windows. A ventilation fan clicked every few minutes, and the table carried old scratches beneath a clear coat of varnish. My son sat across from me in a gray shirt without a tie. "I need a letter," Blake said. "What kind?" "One that explains Lauren pushed the spending and the sales." "She did." His eyes lifted. "Then say she manipulated the whole thing." "I cannot say that. You know what she is like." "I know what the records show." Blake pressed his palms against his knees. "The records also show I gave them access. I turned over passwords. I identified assets. I will confirm all of that." "And the founder file?" "I will confirm that too." His chair creaked as he leaned back. "You would rather watch me go to jail than write one sentence for your son. I will write every true sentence that helps you. I will not write a false one." The ventilation fan clicked again. Blake looked down at the scratches under the varnish. "If I take the plea, I lose everything." "You already lost the hall." "That is not everything." "No." The word sat between us longer than I expected. My letter stated that Blake had cooperated after the scheme was uncovered, returned assets, provided credentials, and helped identify recoverable funds. It also stated that his cooperation began after the wedding was suspended and after the founder file had been preserved. Nothing more. He accepted a felony plea. The agreement required restitution, a period of community confinement followed by strict probation, and a permanent ban on holding a management or trustee position at Whitmore Hall. His cooperation reduced the custodial portion. It did not remove the conviction. Lauren carried her defense into the 18th month. At the public proceeding, she wore a dark blue suit and held her chin high while the serial spreadsheet appeared on a screen. Her attorney called the keys promotional gifts. Then the records were placed side by side. One key, one serial, one tier, one purchaser, one payment. The same pattern repeated across more than 100 verified contracts. The printer order showed 300 units. Scheduled emails asked members to finish balances after the reception had been canceled. Administrator logs placed Lauren inside the payment account while those messages went out. Spending records traced money into wedding expenses, luxury purchases, and personal transfers. The system she had built to display status gave every transaction an address. Lauren finally looked toward the evidence table when the first gold key was removed from its sleeve. Metal touched wood with a small click that carried through the room. Her plea came later, after the remaining motions failed. The sentence included roughly 2 years in custody, supervised release, and restitution tied to recovered assets and future income. The membership company was dissolved after liquidation. Lauren lost the brand, the accounts, and any right to use Whitmore Hall in business. She did not lose every legal possession she had ever owned. That was not the point. What she built from the false promises was taken apart and returned as far as the money allowed. Blake's sentencing occurred separately. He received a shorter period of community confinement, followed by 3 years of strict probation and continuing restitution. His order barred him from managerial access to the venue or trust. The court credited his cooperation without describing him as Lauren's victim. I did not ask for more. I did not ask for less. By then, Blake and Lauren had separated and filed for divorce. No final decree existed. Their marriage had become another process measured in notices, disclosures, and waiting periods. The wedding had lasted less than a day. Its consequences had outlived the flowers by nearly 2 years. At the end of the 20th month, Carl asked me to attend a trust meeting. The office no longer carried my nameplate. An independent trustee sat at the head of the table, and I took the chair nearest the door. The restitution ledger lay open beneath a ceiling light that hummed softly. Paid, rescheduled, modified, pending. Those 4 words divided the lives behind the contracts. Urgent refunds had been completed first. Couples with workable dates had received written performance agreements. Others had accepted new weekends or different spaces. Recovered assets and venue income continued feeding the fund. Some people were still waiting. The trustee turned a page. The current schedule runs another 2 years. Can the hall sustain it? I asked. If bookings remain steady and the reserve is protected. My old instinct rose before I could stop it. Cut maintenance, add events, move money from somewhere else. Instead, I asked, what does the board recommend? The trustee explained the plan. I listened. No veto. No private order to Carl after the meeting. The ledger passed into my hands. Its cover felt rough beneath my thumb, and the paper carried the faint smell of toner. Near the back, a contribution line showed the cabin proceeds. Gregory Whitmore. $640,000. Applied in full. Below it, the next page began, with names marked pending. The first wedding held under the trust began with a question no one asked me. A young coordinator stood beside the ballroom doors, with a clipboard pressed to her chest. String music drifted from inside, soft enough to hear glasses touching as servers set the final tables. The air smelled of lemon polish, white roses, and the cinnamon coffee the bride had requested for her father. "Mr. Whitmore," the coordinator said, "the couple wants to move the cake table closer to the west windows. Is that all right?" For 25 years, everyone in that building had asked me questions exactly that way. My answer rose before I could stop it. Then I saw Carl across the lobby. He was speaking with the trust manager, not watching me. But the old brass nameplate was gone from my office door behind him. "You need to ask Carl," I said. "He has the floor plan and the authority." The coordinator blinked. Of course. She hurried toward him, her heels tapping against the stone. Nothing collapsed. Carl checked the plan, spoke to catering, and approved the change. The cake moved 6 feet. The wedding continued. I stood near the coat room wearing a volunteer badge with my name printed in plain black letters. Gregory. No title. The bride had once held one of Lauren's gold keys. Her original date had been sold to another couple, but she had accepted a new Saturday and a written performance agreement from the trust. That evening, she walked into the ballroom with her father, and nobody asked whether the old founder contract still meant anything. The room answered for us. Music carried beneath the exposed rafters. Candlelight moved across the brick walls. Her father paused halfway down the aisle, steadied himself on her arm, and whispered something that made her laugh through her tears. I did not know what he said. I did not need to. At the reception, a server reached toward me with a tray of champagne. "I'm working," I told him. The young man glanced at my volunteer badge. "You are also standing still." I took one glass. For the first time since the trust took control, I stayed through an event without checking the kitchen schedule, the thermostat, or the deposit account. Each time an employee passed, my mouth prepared a question. I swallowed it. Near the end of dinner, Carl found me beside the garden doors. "You have checked that latch 4 times, he said. I touched it once. You looked at it 4 times. The old manager's voice carried the dry patience he used when a vendor explained away a late delivery. "Does it work?" I asked. "Yes." "Then we have nothing to discuss." Carl handed me a folded sheet. "The board meets Tuesday. Restitution update." The paper felt heavier than one page should. "How many still pending?" "Enough that you should read it sitting down." There it was. Even on a wedding night that worked, the unfinished list waited in someone's pocket. Tuesday's meeting took place in the same conference room where the gold keys had once covered half the table. The trust had replaced the old evidence sleeves with account binders, performance schedules, and payment reports. A locked cabinet held the keys that still needed to remain available for legal records. The trustee opened the ledger. Most urgent refunds were complete. Several couples had married under modified agreements. Recovered assets and venue income had reduced the remaining balance. But 19 claims were still pending in whole or in part. 19. The number did not sound large until I read the names. One family had waited almost 2 years for the final portion of a refund. Another had accepted a smaller event and was owed the difference. A third had moved across the country before the trust could offer a replacement date. "What does the board recommend?" I asked. The trustee turned the ledger toward me. "Continue the present schedule. Protect the operating reserve. Avoid early payments that would force another shortfall." My finger rested beside one name. "This family has waited longer than most. They also signed the same schedule as everyone else. I could contribute more." Carl shifted in his chair. The trustee did not. You already contributed the cabin proceeds. The trust was designed so one person could not change the order, because a name affected him. The room went quiet except for the hum of the light. That was the structure I had demanded. No private rescue. No owner deciding whose pain counted first. I closed the ledger. Keep the schedule. The words scraped on the way out. After the meeting, the trustee gave me an official notice concerning Lauren. Her custodial sentence had begun months earlier. The membership company no longer existed, and restitution would continue through recovered assets and future income ordered by the court. I read the notice in my old office. The room had become shared workspace. Someone had moved the desk closer to the window. Labeled binders stood where I once kept framed photographs of Evelyn and Blake. Lauren's name appeared twice on the page. I folded the notice and placed it in the legal archive. Not on the wall, not in my pocket. The sound of paper sliding into the folder was smaller than I expected. A week later, Blake waited outside Whitmore Hall after the staff had gone home. Probation allowed him to work, attend approved meetings, and make restitution payments. But he could not hold authority at the venue or enter restricted areas without permission. He stood beyond the front steps with both hands visible and a plain coat buttoned to his throat. Divorced now, he had more gray at his temples. "You cannot be here after hours without approval," I said. I stayed outside. His voice had lost the polished edge he once used with staff. Each word came slower now, as though he checked it before letting it go. "What do you need?" I asked. "There is a restitution work session next month. Volunteers will be sorting old claimant records and preparing notices." "They told you that?" "It is listed through my program." I waited. Blake looked toward the tall windows but did not step closer. "I want to attend," my son said. "That is not my decision." "I know." The answer stopped me. He rubbed his thumb against the side of one finger. "No wedding ring." "I thought you might tell them I should be allowed," Blake said. "There is an application." "Submit it." His mouth tightened, then eased. "You could make one call." "I could. I won't." Rainwater still shone in the cracks between the stones. Blake looked down at it. "Would you be there?" he asked. "If I am scheduled." "That is all?" "That is all." He nodded once. No apology. No embrace. Nothing easy enough to mistake for repair. Blake turned toward the parking lot, then stopped. "I made a payment last Friday," he said. "The trustee records the payments." "I know." My son walked away without asking whether I was proud of him. I watched until he reached his car, then went inside because the board had asked me to complete one final task. The master key had remained in temporary custody while access assignments were rewritten. It was no longer mine to carry, yet the board wanted the last old key entered into the permanent log by the person who had held it longest. Carl waited in the office with the locked custody box. The key lay on a white cloth between us. Its brass head had been worn smooth by years against my palm. A shallow scratch crossed one tooth from the winter. A lock froze, and I forced it harder than I should have. Beside the cloth sat the logbook. "Last chance to make a copy," Carl said. I looked at him. His mouth twitched. "Wanted to see whether you were listening." I signed the line marked "Former Custodian." Carl signed beneath mine. The box opened with a muted click. Inside were assigned emergency keys, each sealed and numbered. No family section, no private slot. I picked up the master key. Cool metal, familiar weight. For years, that weight had meant I could enter any room, correct any mistake, and make any final decision. Blake and Lauren had built their plan around the belief that I would never surrender it. They were wrong. I placed the key inside. Carl closed the lid and turned the new lock. When I left the office, music from another rehearsal floated through the ballroom. Someone laughed near the stage. A cart rolled across the kitchen tile, one wheel squeaking at the same spot it always had. At the front doors, my hand moved toward my coat pocket. Empty. The door shut behind me with a firm mechanical catch. By habit, I took one step back. Then I stopped. The lock belonged to someone else now. I walked toward the parking lot without checking it. You may spend years believing that protecting your family means keeping every mistake private, covering every debt, and giving one more chance before anyone outside the house discovers the truth. But when someone uses your love as permission to harm other people, silence is no longer protection. It becomes shelter for the wrongdoing. You are allowed to separate love from access. You can love your child and still remove that child from your business. You can remember the good years and still preserve the emails, contracts, payment records, and promises that prove what happened. You do not have to rewrite the truth to make a relative's consequences smaller, and you do not have to accept blame for consequences created by choices you did not make. That does not mean acting in anger without checking the facts. A suspicion is not proof. Two similar payments are not automatically the same money. A forwarded screenshot is not an original record with a traceable source. A family accusation is not a legal finding. When other people's homes, savings, weddings, or futures are involved, you owe them more than a satisfying accusation. You owe them careful records, honest limits, and decisions you can defend after the shouting ends. The hardest part may come when doing the right thing costs you something real. It is easy to demand accountability when only the guilty person loses. It is harder when you must sell something tied to someone you loved, use your own money to keep innocent employees paid, or surrender control of the very property everyone tried to take from you. Yet that cost is what separates revenge from responsibility. You are not simply punishing someone. You are repairing damage without becoming another person who believes ownership gives them the right to decide everything. Sometimes the strongest way to take something back is not to keep it. You may regain control long enough to stop the harm, then place that control where no son, daughter-in-law, parent, or future heir can misuse it again. Boundaries become stronger when they do not depend on your mood. Written rules, independent oversight, clear authority, and transparent records can protect people long after your anger has cooled. You are also not required to forgive on demand. A person may apologize, cooperate, repay money, or serve a sentence. Those actions matter, but they do not erase what was done. Rebuilding trust is a separate process, and the person who caused the damage does not get to set its speed. You may leave a narrow door open for changed behavior while keeping the keys, money, authority, and inheritance out of reach. Ask yourself this: if someone in your family sold, promised, or spent something that belonged to you, would you expose the truth, even if it damaged the relationship? Would you protect your child from punishment if doing so left strangers carrying the loss? And if the only way to stop the same betrayal from happening again was to give up control of something you spent your life building, could you do it? Perhaps you have faced a moment when family loyalty and basic fairness pulled you in opposite directions. What did you choose? What did it cost you? And what boundary would you set differently now?